All right, we are here with Courtney Rowe, candidate in the 1st District to take over Rod Blum's seat. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good. Just had a few questions for you, if you don't mind. These are questions that we tagged you in earlier on Facebook. Starting off with the separation between religion and government. It was an issue that wasn't brought up tonight, unfortunately. I'm kind of curious. I know there's a lot of viewers that would like to get your take on that. Do you consider yourself to be a strong supporter of this, and what does it mean to you? And I'll add in there, when you told me a little bit about your background, you said you have an interesting perspective on this. So
Right.
What would you like to share with us?
Right. So, I met my wife, how all lesbians meet their wives at church. That's the joke one sometimes I tell some of my stump speeches. But my wife's gone on to become a minister, and she's an ordained minister in our faith. I think that separation of church and state is so important because both religion and government are better off when they're separate. I know after the 2016 bloodbath that we went through, my wife was fortunate enough to be selected to speak at our national synod that we have every 2 years in 2017. And sitting there, watching her speak and watching the resolutions that were passed, I saw my church stand up for a minimum living wage. I saw my church stand up for universal health care. I saw my church stand up for protecting immigrants and making sure that immigrants have fair wages and are protected. I saw my church stand up for all these justice issues that my government hadn't stood up for in 2016. And it just sort of re-emphasized to me why it's so important that these things are separate, because the government is there to make sure that citizens are kept safe, that society is run correctly, and to make sure that religious extremism doesn't run rampant or cause harm to people. And religion is there to check us morally, to check all of us individually. And we all need to be able to find whatever our spiritual center is, and whatever religion or faith or spirituality works for us, because it's such a key component to people's lives. And you cannot tell somebody or dictate to somebody at a government level what that religion or what that faith needs to be. So it's so important. So I am a person of faith, but that's why I 100% support the separation of church and state.
You made a perfect point about when religion becomes weaponized.
Yeah.
And we saw that here in Iowa just within the last week with the 6-week abortion ban. It truly is an example of what happens when religious belief, especially a very narrow version of it, only held by a very select group of people, is allowed to dictate against the will of the people. Where do you, as a candidate and or an individual, draw the line between a person's right to hold deeply held beliefs and another person's right to live their life how they see fit?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that, religion can be a great way to guide you morally. But when it comes to making laws in our society, while your faith or your moral convictions might have made you think about a topic for the first time, you should always be able to justify why this law or this rule benefits all of society. And it shouldn't rely on your religious faith. If I have to say, because Christianity tells me so, when I'm referring to a law, then I haven't done the homework in justifying that law. While my faith as a Christian and other people's faiths might have brought them to this topic or made them think about this topic, it might have made me think the first time about poverty or healthcare or whatever. But when I talk about a $15 minimum wage and I talk about healthcare, I'm talking about it because as an engineer, I've gone through and I've done the homework and I've done the research and realized that these are the economical solutions. As far as where you draw the line, there's been a lot of talk about things like being a lesbian, let's talk about wedding cakes, right? Do you have to bake a cake for someone, right? And the way I look at it is, as a business, you get to decide what products you're gonna offer. And you get to decide what customizations, if you do customizations of products that you'll offer. So if a gay couple comes in and they look at your booklets and they pick one of the cakes out of your brochures and they say, I'd like to buy this cake for the price you have listed, you don't have a right to say no to them. You don't get to discriminate based on who they are as people, because they're selecting a product that you have. But let's say the same guy couple comes in and says, can you do a custom rainbow cake with fireworks shooting out of it or something, right? You have a right as a business to say, we don't make rainbow cakes. If that's not something you offer, then you don't have to offer it. And the same note as, if a neo-Nazi group comes in, if they want to buy a cake and it doesn't have anything different on it than what's in your booklet, even though they're neo-Nazis and you might really hate the neo-Nazis, you have to sell them the cake. But if they ask you to put a big swastika on it, you can say, no, we don't do that here. We don't put swastikas on cake. And so that's kind of the idea that where I think that separation comes from. You do not have to put a customization that you feel strongly against. If you're a Jewish butcher, you don't have to sell pork. That's the customizations that you don't have to offer. But if you offer a product for a price and you're a business that's out there and doing business in the public domain, you cannot discriminate against who your customers are. So that's where I draw the line.
Wonderful answer. You touch on a good point about religious freedom, and this is a huge issue, and it goes back, 20, 30 years, and it's a very complex thing. What I want to ask is, should you win in November, would you challenge those that want to use RFRA laws as a weapon instead of a shield to try to protect people?
Yeah, definitely, because like I said, you may agree with something that somebody's trying to pass today. You may agree with what they're saying, and it's based on their religion. But tomorrow it could be completely opposite, and it could be something that you disagree with. And that's why when we talk about religious freedom, it's about your ability to worship however you wish, to teach your children the religious beliefs that you want to. Like I said, you don't have to provide services or customizations or products that you don't believe in. There are a lot of ways that we can protect religious freedom without discriminating against someone. But when you come and you attack people because they just want to use the bathroom, and you attack people, abortion, you brought that up, or you referenced it because of this last week. And, I always find it really interesting as a Christian when people talk about how abortion is prohibited in the Bible, because it's just not true. That's not even true. Numbers 5 actually describes how to give an abortion, and that the priest gives the woman the water of bitterness that brings on her curse. So that's not even factually true based on Christianity. And the whole purpose there, that they say the reason why it's justified to have an abortion in that particular case, is if a man believes his wife cheated on him. And this is a way to cleanse her womb so that he can take her back into her home. And then the time of patriarchy, a woman who was divorced would have been destitute. And so they said in that case, this is allowed. And what I find interesting about that is in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is asked, what are the conditions that you can divorce your wife? And of course, these are guys who are looking for multiple reasons why they can divorce their wife. And Jesus says, you are not allowed to divorce your wife, except if she's cheated on you, if she's been unfaithful. And even then, you should try to find a way to take her back and forgive her. Now, based on the fact that he's a Jew, and based on one of the ways that they might have been able to forgive them, is by having an abortion procedure. Jesus doesn't directly say that he supports it, but you could make an argument that indirectly he says that that's more just. Because leaving a woman who has dedicated her life to you, per the standards of marriage at that time, leaving her destitute by divorcing her is wrong. And so I look at this both as a Christian and as an engineer or a politician or whatever else legally, and it doesn't make sense. And when we look at abortion, it's a symptom of other problems. It's a symptom of failure of other issues. It's a symptom of women who, women and men who don't have access to birth control, haven't had good sexual education, a failure of the birth control methods that we currently have. It's a failure of society not supporting young families enough where people are afraid that they'll be economically destitute if they have a child. We don't have paid leave for mothers, so women, even if they do give up their child for adoption, have to wonder about, will they be able to afford the time off of work, or will they be destitute just from getting pregnant? When we talk about babies, maybe being aborted because of different medical problems that they have, without having health insurance for everyone, we basically tell people if you go forward and have this special needs child,